everybody. It's Tom Murphy here with you from Parkway Music in Clifton Park, New York. Had the privilege of being invited to the Martin Guitar Factory in Nazareth, Pennsylvania back in August. Had a unbelievable time, learned a lot, and had met some very genuinely great people. So it was very nice when we first arrived. They had our name on a billboard as we entered, and they dedicated a gentleman, Matt Cisco, to be our private guide all day. And he immediately took us in to the factory where you see everybody building, and you can see in the picture here a gentleman cutting out the purfling around the sound hole to put that in the top of the guitar. Everybody, it seems, has a station around the factory that everybody is dedicated to doing a certain part of the build. They immediately brought me in a room which isn't in the normal tour, because you can go on a Martin guitar tour anytime during the middle of the week, but they bring you into the regular factory. This is downstairs where the wood mill is, and you can see all the vent work. That's all stuff sucking all the dust out of it. It's a very clean room. In this picture, you could see the gentleman cutting pieces of wood. Those are all going to be necks when they're finished. We see here somebody matching the backs together and gluing them in this machine, and they sit that way, and you can see how they're stenciled out for when they'll be finally cut. These pieces will be backs and sides. It's mahogany, and they have the whole mill is right there where they cut everything. This gentleman, his job is to match backs all day long. So he'll lay out a whole bunch of pieces of wood, go through and make sure all the backs match properly. I'd love that job. Again, more wood. This is going to be more for binding and purfling. And this is where he's actually laying out the shape of the backs to fit onto those pieces of wood. And here, this room is a kiln, the entire room. So we see here pallets of rosewood that go into the room. They get kiln dried, go back out, sit for a couple of weeks, go back in the room, kilned again, back out, sit for a few weeks, and dried again for a third time. And then they have a backlog of an awful lot of wood. They say 3 years worth of wood to build guitars with if they stopped getting wood today. Beautiful layers and rows of Madagascar rosewood in the kiln. This gentleman is planing the back and sides wood. This is down in the mill again, and what we see here is a pallet of sinker mahogany. They found a 100-year-old slow-growth mahogany tree in Asia that was underwater for 200 years, and they bought the whole tree. Really impressive stuff, but they bought the whole tree, and that's all that there is of it left as of August. As you can see, the wood comes in giant planks. We're setting up to make purfling there. You can see the part that's cut. Well, they get stripped down again, and that's the inside of the guitar on the binding on the top and the back. And this is a machine that does that, the Unimat 500. So downstairs again, gentleman with a bunch of neck blanks that they cut out of those pieces of wood that you saw earlier. And there they are. Now, even the smallest pieces, these are leftover. These pieces are actually smaller than what they look like. They're going to be ukulele necks. They waste almost nothing. And the big side of the factory, they did ask me politely not to take a picture of it, so I didn't. But they have a wall behind a cage which has hundreds of guitar cases that have one of every model that they've made since the early 70s. All the presentation guitars, collectible guitars that come in and out of the museum. So they found out I played, and they started handing me wonderful instruments to play. You can see how happy I am. That's a Brazilian Rosewood D28 from the 60s that they had sitting there. Really, really great guitar. This is, again, where they have the wood stored in rows and rows of rosewood. Here, what we see now in this picture is going to be experimental woods, where they have olive and just all these more exotic woods that are more experiment type of things, where they might use it for a head cap or experiment making a back and sides out of it. Very pretty stuff, though. And being with the way wood is today, they're constantly looking for different species to use in building. Now, down the row from where all the guitars were kept is the private reserve wood room, and this was probably my favorite part. There's a gentleman, Jay, who was the head of all the wood, and he gave me a great tour of this part of the facility. Normally, people can arrange to go down and pick out backs and sides and tops to have them make you a guitar. The retail charge on it's $1,500 in a retail scheme. But he decided to waive all those charges because we're such a good dealer, and I was there. So I wound up, luckily enough, picking out some wood to build 3 guitars. The wood that you see in this picture is Brazilian rosewood, which I went through and picked a set. It was really gorgeous. Couldn't afford that. It's pretty dramatically priced. So Jay recommended I try to look for some of the Madagascar. The piece that you see here is the piece I wound up picking, which looks almost identical to the piece of Brazilian that I chose. And we now have that guitar. The next picture is that same piece of Madagascar rosewood and a piece of Sinker mahogany that I chose to build an 18 style out of. And it's really nice on that because a really beautiful waterfall grain coming down the back of it. It should be a brilliant, brilliant instrument. There's me and Jay holding those pieces of wood. The gentleman or lady who winds up getting that guitar will get pictures of this in my build specs on the guitar. That's the piece of Brazilian that I really liked. That boy, I got a grin on my face on that one. Beautiful piece of wood. Those guitars are retailing around 50 grand, so it's not something that I could jump into personally, but they still do have plenty of Brazilian there to look through. Spruce tops. Again, this is a closer view of that woman gluing the back and sides together. We're still in the downstairs of the factory where, unfortunately, most folks can't go, but I was lucky enough to go. Rosewood blanks. They're gluing in the dots there that you can see. This is a machine, I believe this is the machine that cuts the fingerboards themselves. As you can see, they do a dozen of them at a time. Another great picture of that. Here is where they cut out all the bridge sections. This machine does a bunch of them at a time again. But still, have humans there making sure everything's correct. But a lot of the handwork out of the rough stuff is done by machines. Again, more the assembly process. Everybody having fun building. Closer shot of the fingerboards being cut. This machine is cutting necks. They do 4 at a time. Really interesting. And all this stuff is the rough cut part of it. They're not doing by far any finish work here. Lots of sawdust. All this sawdust, by the way, they wound up sucking up in their machine and using it to produce their HPL that they use in a lot of the Mexican guitars. It's really impressive. They waste nothing. The biggest piece of wood they throw away is about the size of your thumbnail. And they actually put that in a vat out back that the employees take and make things out of it, jewelry boxes and what have you. So really impressive. Rows and rows of stacked, stored necks for the next build. This gentleman is grading the backs. He sits there all day long checking out the pieces of wood and the premium stuff I'm sure he'll put aside for certain guitars. And not, if there's a problem with it, I'm sure he'll discard it and start again. Now we're back upstairs, and we've started in the museum, and that's the first real shot you see through the window of the museum, which is just some beautiful, beautiful inlay work. The Stouffer-style guitars, they're starting the history of Martin here, where they really started out. Real impressive nylon string stuff. Really, really gorgeous classical artwork style guitars, but still very, very playable today. Moving further in history, you can see on the bottom and the right-hand side, more slotted headstock, getting away from the Stouffer-style headstock that they used. Going through, they explain about the Cherry Hill factory. Other instruments, zithers, ukuleles, mandolins, all kinds of things that they made that a lot of folks don't associate Martin with. This is C.F. Martin's original toolbox in this picture, which is really incredible and overwhelming to actually see that they still exist. and have them prominently displayed. All the planes, uh, things to put the sides together, braces, what have you. Really impressive. Clamps, of course, they don't do it this way anymore, but all this stuff still works. Impressive toolbox. Getting back to the, harp guitars, mandolins and things, very prominent throughout their history. Ukuleles. We even have Tiny Tim's ukulele here somewhere. Odd harp guitars. You never know what the heck you're going to see because, back in the early 1900s, it wasn't just the guitar. Impressive inlay work, slotted headstocks going into the more solid headstock, which is more of a modern take on it. Again, moving forward in history. Really interesting guitar on the right-hand side. Slotted headstock with a very odd drone neck that's fretless. I never know what to call these things, but I sure would like to try to play one. You can see the archtop guitar in the middle of this picture again, which was kind of more experimental for them. A lot of those guitars got converted throughout the years to being flat tops, but very historically significant in their history. More of them, again, more modern as we move forward. You can see the OM on the left, gorgeous instrument, but still doing the slotted headstock on certain models. How could you not take a picture of that? Again, the archtop thing that they did for years, you can see the tenor guitar on the right-hand side. So they're doing all the different voices that they would have had during the 20s for different style orchestras. Mandolins, tenors, six strings. The guitar on the bottom with a very odd resonator around the back. Again, always trying to improve sound, experiment, get more volume, certainly. A slightly better picture. Now, there was a guitar there that it was a pre-war D45, which I'm holding in this picture. It had a sign on it that said Holy Grail, and I had to inquire what's with the Holy Grail guitar. And he bought it off the original owner and has kept it in the museum. But it sounds so good that they're really trying to voice their guitars after that instrument, so they dubbed it the Holy Grail. I expressed my enthusiasm about it, and the gentleman said, "Hold on one moment," and he opens up the case and hands it to me. I was lucky enough to play it for about 10 minutes, and it was unbelievable. The next shot, they had a guitar, it was an OM42 that was on the beaches in Normandy during D-Day. It was a communications officer, I guess, that carried that guitar with him throughout the war. And again, I was really blown away with it, and he did the same thing. Hold on a moment. And he opened up the case and handed it to me. I actually got a bit weepy holding that guitar. It was very incredible. Artwork guitars, again, the presentation guitars, the Da Vinci guitar with the Last Supper and the Mona Lisa. I didn't get to play it. I didn't ask to play it. I think it's an artwork piece. They even have the Last Supper on the case to the darn thing, which is really incredible. Here's the original old factory. Still there, thriving. Me and the missus sitting in front of it. Classic shot. In the inside, this is the second floor, actually. The first floor I didn't take a picture of because it's a retail shop where they sell kits, cases, parts. Upstairs, believe it or not, I assume that's a lunchroom. The third floor is empty. The fourth floor is empty. It's a beautiful shot of out the window. I imagine, 60 years ago, looking out that window building guitars every day wouldn't be such a bad thing. Again, the outside, looking out the window from upstairs. I guess that would be the fourth floor. And I think I actually have some pictures of guys building in this room. That are very old pictures that I've gotten from, just Martin pictures that I've seen. So it was nice to be in that room. I think I probably have a couple instruments that were made in that room. Normally, they don't let folks go up into the attic. I'm a bit of a pester, and I asked like 4 times, and he said, "Go ahead." So I went up, and it was glorious. There's a bunch of old boxes with parts and tipple necks and uke necks and who the heck knows what. It was like for me, American pickers on steroids. And I didn't stay too long, but was lucky enough to snap a few really cool shots. I'd really love to go through those boxes someday. And then after lunch, had a great lunch with a bunch of folks there, the head of marketing, the head of sales for Europe, my rep's boss. Wonderful, wonderful people, great conversations about gear and the industry. But back to the factory again, letting the bracing dry on the tops. This is the station where they start carving the bracing, although all that bracing, by the way, is hand carved by at the time there was 3 women. One woman was the most intense looking person. She didn't look up. Every single stroke was magnificently executed perfectly. I was in awe of the skill level that was going on there. So onward. This next picture is them, of course, gluing the sides together to the heel block. Putting on the purfling on the inside of the guitar, still done the old way, by hand. This is where they have 2 vacuum bags that expand to put the tops and backs to these sides, opposed to clamping them the old way. It's a much more modern, efficient way of doing things, because they place them in there, press a button, and the bag blows up. Here they're putting on binding. You can see, again, still all done by hand, taped on. This gentleman is stripping it, the tape off, and then we'll clean up the edges. Master craftsman at work, doing the heel cap. Here we're doing some prepping work on the sanding, again, cleaning up where the binding was put on and what have you. Luckily, all this stuff isn't done by hand anymore. They have machines to help them with it, but the human aspect is in full force for sure. Necks, sitting, waiting. They put, before they finish them, they put a filler on them that needs to sit and dry so the lacquer doesn't sink too much into the wood. Again, letting that stuff dry. A few ukes there. Guitars in the finished process. This is in a dust-free room where guitars are drying after being lacquered. This is done before the neck is put on. Instead of a human being sitting there buffing things out, the first stages of buffing are all done with robotics, which takes a lot of the real rough work out, but all the finish work is still done by hand. Again, somebody applying the first finish, the filler finish, to the necks. Purfling, again, all done by hand. Really interesting. Here we're doing the finish carving to the heel pocket, and you can see on the front of the guitar that they have it all taped off and the inlay work is already in. This is the final prep work now to attach the neck. The neck is attached, sitting there glued, waiting to dry to go on to the next process. Remember I was saying when we were carving the necks earlier with the machine, here we have a picture of a gentleman doing the finish work. Again, it's a rough cut, so he needs to do the final shaping. Now, they asked me if there was anything else I wanted to do, and I asked to go back down into the wood room again because that was my favorite part. So we met Jay back downstairs again, and I had a piece of koa on my mind. So beautiful piece of koa that I'm holding there is going to be made into a 4-0, which I'm still waiting for. That's going to have an Engelmann top, Madagascar rosewood binding, gold butter beans, 45 style headstock. I'll be lucky if that doesn't make its way to my house. And then we start at the beginning again. Thanks for listening to me about the factory tour. I had a great time, learned an awful lot. A few things to say about the folks there. Everybody was just genuinely kind to me. The employees just seemed very, very happy. I admire Chris Martin for the way that he's running his company. I think it's genius. So I recommend everybody go down and take that tour, experience the museum, and go into the shop and the pick and parlor and have some fun.